it's mainly with hindsight that we realised there were lots of things happening. But the first obvious thing was one year, Pat, year after year, would wrap past the parcel for the children and so on. We'd have a party, and it was the traditional thing. And about 2 or 3 years ago, Pat spent a couple of hours messing around with layers of paper. She'd wrapped all the presents, and then she said to me, after about 2 hours, "How do you wrap past the parcel?" And I couldn't understand what do you mean? I said, just put them in and wrap it up. We realised she was just wrestling with the whole concept of wrapping up layers in a parcel, and it seemed bizarre, didn't it?
Yes.
And in the end, I think I did it. I don't know.
Well, I struggled for it. For everything I couldn't do.
But you obviously didn't give up.
With hindsight,
yes.
We now realise there were lots and lots of little events, even like loading a dishwasher, or especially things like volume. Like you've got some leftover meal, Pat would say to me, "Will this fit this dish?" And I said, "Well, no, it's miles too much." And I realised that she couldn't judge how much would go. She'd have a Tupperware or something to put leftover rice or something away, and she'd take out a dish that was miles too big or miles too small, and silly little things like that, nothing important.
I felt that something was not right, and I couldn't put my finger on it.
The optician gave Pat a note for our doctor.
Okay.
And then when the doctor read that, he said, the optician thinks you need to see a neurologist. There's a problem. And so we booked an appointment with a neurologist. He gave you a lot of tests. The traditional sort of tests with copying things. And his conclusion, he sat us both down and said, "I'm sorry to tell you," he said, "but I think you've got something nasty. He said, "I think you've got a brain tumour. I need you to have a scan as quickly as possible," which we did. A week later we went back to look at the outcome, and it wasn't a brain tumour, but he said, "I don't understand," and he showed us all cross sections and the results of the scan.
Yes.
And he said the rear of your brain has just developed this unusual pattern. He said "You're quite young. I don't see this in people quite as young." And recommended that we went to a specialist in a hospital.
Okay.
Actually, we didn't get a lot of information, to be quite honest. We went to the memory clinic, in fact, maybe 2 or 3 times before we were properly told that we had this thing called PCA. So then naturally we got busy on the internet and checked out what it was, and I think we've come to learn what PCA is. But it wasn't fun, nor what to do about it either. We took part in some research, didn't you? And that actually helped a lot. And then we learned about the sport group, and that helped a lot more. Because it's nice to know that you're not the only one. But it's mainly with hindsight that we look at what Pat was doing, like, the traffic lights, business of...
What happened at the traffic lights?
The traffic lights changed from green to red, and I couldn't figure out whether it meant stop or go. I just, and I sat there for a bit, and then there was a space when I could move forward, but it was quite frightening, really. It seemed stupid, illogical that I couldn't figure out such a simple thing.
It's kind of episodic, that there are lots of little events, and then we both come to terms with, we realise that Pat can't do. I mean, Pat's a brilliant cook, for example, yet following a recipe and the sequence, Pat gets in a muddle. And we were ending up, Pat would say, "Well, can you microwave this, or how long has this got to be on?" How some recipes said, Pat can't cope with the sequences, but give her a wok and a lot of food, she'll conjure up something really good. So it's really odd little things that happen like that we just cope with in a way. But none of them are of any great consequence, except for probably reading and writing.
It's slow, it's not sort of fluent reading.
It's following columns, isn't it?
It is difficult, and it's and you know, I was a writer, and you know, there are books waiting to be finished. Whether they will be or not, I'm not sure.
But Pat's other personality, generally speaking, is much the same, sense of humour and so on.
I'm shopping for things.
Yeah.
Well, it is impossible, really, trying to identify what's on the shelves.
Yes. Well,
Okay.
Yes, it's shelves in particular, isn't it? If Pat goes to get a particular spice or something, she'll know that it's in this section.
I can't do shopping because I can't do change, and I can't do
Mhm.
money. So that's very limiting.
Do you go out on your own?
Occasionally, it all depends on mood, because there are good days and bad days when I just can't face it, and other days when you can, but then you've still got the problems of money and
Yes.
that sort of thing. And I think I'm learning to live with it. And sort of, you start to sort of manage things that you couldn't manage at the beginning. You know, trying to remember where you put things down. You know, having a system so that you can find things doesn't always work. It helps.
We have a local Alzheimer's. We have a local branch of the Alzheimer Society who've been really brilliant.
Yes.
They, again, Pat's their only member with PCA,
Mm-hmm.
but they have things like therapy. They're really, really good, really supportive. Give us lots of advice on even benefits. You know, we're not necessarily needed benefits, but they really are helpful in everything we needed. We're not having to ask so many questions. We've learned such a lot. I mean, I would say the first 2 or 3 appointments with the hospital, we didn't actually know what we were doing or why we were going.
Yes.
Well, we knew we were following up this test on Pat's brain,
Yes.
but really uncertain as to what the diagnosis meant and what the condition was about, what the future had in store.
Actually, I think Terry Pratchett has had a lot to do with
yes, it's been really helpful.
informing about
Yeah.
that condition.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes me feel better.
The struggle, sort of speaking as a carer,
Yes.
is the constant problem of knowing whether or not to help or intervene.
Yeah.
I don't know
It's
the answer
difficult
to
for
that.
you.
I can see Pat trying to do something that in an inkling I could do for her, and I
Yes.
think, well, does that help or does it actually make it worse because she forgets something else or whatever? And I find
But I do tell you.
you do, yes.
I do say, like,
I
don't
guess
do
that-
it,
don't
because
do
if
it.
I'll get used to you doing it, and then I won't be able to do it.
Yes,
And that's really good that you're communicating there.
yes, I think that's important.
I guess it is about trying to find a balance
Yes, yes.
of,
That's
yeah.
right. Again, as a carer, it's also hard to understand some of the conceptual, the abstract features of what PCA does. To me, this just obviously doesn't make sense. You know, I say this is obvious, like I was talking about the volume. You know, that won't pour into there. It's obvious, but of course, I have to think, no, it's only obvious to me,
Yeah.
and to someone with PCA, it's not obvious. You know, and so you've got to come to terms with understanding some abstract ideas that realise that you don't share the same, idea about it.
Yes.
But it works. Most of
Yeah,
the
we get
time,
on
yes.
all right.